Hey, team. Welcome back to another episode of the Jenn Commandments podcast. I am your host, Jenn Wien. I'm an engineer currently working in Wisconsin, and I grew up in the Chicagoland area. And I went to college in Michigan. Yeah. Sorry, the cadence is off. Should I restart? But anyway, okay, so cool. All right. So happy. Okay, today's Saturday for me. Um, it is the first day of Black History Month. And we also just got orders from our president to not celebrate those things or something. I don't know. I'll be honest. This time period it's a lot, it's heavy. It is invigorating to be like, okay, so because of this is our time that we need to start speaking out more than ever. Which is partially why I wanted to restart the podcast to begin with, because I am going to continue to use my voice in whatever capacity I can until I can't anymore. So, ha 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 ha. Yeah. So, with that being said, I am going to highlight some creatives or I don't know, any person who happens to be Black that I think is interesting and I'm going to talk about. That's what I'm going to be doing this month. Originally, this episode, I said last week that I was going to do it about Alphaba. I do think that is an applicable episode to do. However, I got a targeted like news article of people, like the news article was highlighting that people are boycotting the Super Bowl for various reasons, but one of those reasons being that Kendrick Lamar is the halftime performer. And one of the comments, so I'm doing this episode out of spite. So one of the comments was like something about Kendrick Lamar not being talented. And I got hashtag triggered a little bit. So I was like, fuck you. I am going to do a deep dive because I know that Kendrick Lamar is deeply personal. Damn, as an album is deeply personal to me in a lot of ways. And we'll get into that a little bit. But I also know that outside of my personal relationship to Kendrick Lamar and his music, me and my friend, I also know that he has a lot of accolades and like he is known to be a literal genius creatively, and he got a Pulitzer Prize. He's the first ever non-classical or jazz musician to win a Pulitzer Prize. And so we're going to get into all of that. And so I wanted to take like a deep dive into him for real instead of me just like being like, no, he's good because I have a personal relationship to him. Like, no, there's literal like classes and stuff about his work. So we're going to get into him. We're going to get into sort of maybe what was happening, what he witnessed during his formative years that allows him and his work to be formative for us. And then we'll get into some three songs throughout three different eras of his career that I think all sort of highlight the same story and the same picture, and how Kendrick Lamar has used his creative abilities or whatever, his creativity, to push and allow people to connect to the very real trauma and systemic, widespread problems that are in America. So I don't know if I have any credibility to talk about this, I'll be honest. um I Kendrick Lamar has been probably my top 5 artists since Damn came out, probably since my senior year of high school. I'm not like around that time period. Damn really outlined a lot of things that I was experiencing in my own childhood, that I hadn't even really put words to yet. And I wouldn't have put words to for a very long time, but it allowed me to feel that familiarity of, oh, this person understands, you know. And then also, Dan was there when I entered. Up to that point, I had always been in predominantly Black spaces. And because of that, I thought that was the genetic makeup of the whole world. And then I was blissfully unaware that I was blissfully unaware of like the extent to which racism existed still until I entered college. And I don't know, I think I might have talked about this before on the podcast. But just to reiterate, like, part of why I didn't understand racism was because like some of the explicit racism that might fly in predominantly white spaces, to which I saw happen in predominantly white spaces or have seen happen in predominantly white spaces, that shit does not fly in Black forward spaces. Obviously, I had witnessed older people in my life exhibit racism, but like I thought that was sort of like an old and tired thing. And then I entered Western Michigan University, and not to say that, well, I think Western has had issues in the past with racist stuff, but regardless, I didn't know white folks was really out here acting the way that they were acting until I was in a space where white folks were free to act the way that they be acting, you know. And that's really just like the heart of it, you know. So yeah, weird. So that's that on that. So anyway, I don't know where I started that from. Damn. So okay. And so Damn was there to sort of hold my hand through that, of like these things that had been discussed in the album. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But like those themes, I understood now for the first time, and not understood from a I feel that way, but understood from a like, oh, this is what this is referencing. I had not previously even thought about that as a present tense, you know? So that's sort of when my worldview started to shift. And Kendrick Lamar was there to just like, you know, DNA was there to like hold my hand through it, you know? And so, yeah, so am I credible to talk about Kendrick Lamar and what I think his impact on society has been? I don't know, but I do know that it has helped me navigate unpacking my own biases. It has helped me unpack the world. It has done all the things that it has won awards for me. So that's the tea on that. So we're gonna start just with like a general he was born in June, or he was born in Compton on June 17th, 1987. And Compton is known for its history in hip hop culture and socioeconomic struggle. He grew up during the era of West Coast hip hop and was deeply influenced by the local legends like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. He originally began rapping at a young age, and he was initially known as K Dot. But once he started to see success, he decided that he decided to go by his name. Full name being Kendrick Lamar Duckworth. He just goes by Kendrick Lamar. Um, but he does have a song named Duckworth. His upbringing in Compton exposed him to violence and crime and systemic issues, which you can see within his music. So before we can really get into his music and what he's commenting on in present day, we have to sort of understand what he witnessed during his most formative years. Like in my formative years, I witnessed Michael Jackson die. We have to like reel in and put into perspective what was happening culturally, what was happening like politically, etc. So, um like we said, he was born in 87. So that means he comes to like sentient age around the mid to late 90s. And then, so his parents are also, so we also have to take into consideration who his parents were and what they were also experiencing. So in the late 80s and the early 90s, um, around the time where he was being raised, Compton was heavily impacted by the crack cocaine epidemic. The neighborhood was home to various gangs, most notably Bloods and Crips. And like there are lots and lots of really good videos explaining the lore behind a lot of this. I'm not the one that to go into detail of these things. Um, I'm just here to sort of paint a picture of what's influenced him. But there are some really good YouTubers who do that. One being FD Signifier. He does excellent videos. He's done a video about the whole Kendrick and Drake beef. I don't really go into that beef a whole lot in this episode. We could do a whole episode on that alone. And but also I think not a lot of their beef, like a lot of it is internal black community stuff. I think that is not for me to comment on, like that's like y'all need to feel how you need to feel about whatever. That's none of my business. But I didn't really write anything about that whole thing. But FD Signifier does a great job on talking about that. He talks about like Mac Miller. He'll talk about Eminem. Like he is a hip hop video essayist, and that's like it is so cool. I also do I watch, is it like Trap Lore Ross or I don't know, but check him out too. Just look up Trap Lore and he should come up. Also he does more like contextual, like what I'm sort of doing here. Like probably the first episode that I watched of his was I think about Juice World, which is like wildly, that's like a hometown hero to like my hometown. And so we like, just to know that lore was really interesting too. Like I it's something it's a special interest of mine. So check them out if you want more detailed, like a more detailed analysis of like gang lore or whatever. But yeah. We were talking about Crips and Bloods, and this created a really volatile environment in Compton, and especially for young people, because who are the people who need those communities? Like it is frequently or those low income areas, it is young people who need a cheap place to stay, often maybe uneducated. At the time, like, being educated led you to more opportunities. Like, these places are often have like factories where maybe everyone in the area works at it, or like it is a place that everyone is struggling and dealing with demons that are generationally there. Like, that, what they have had to deal with is not their fault. It is understandable for anyone to have gone through the emotional, like, anyway. I'm starting to project my feelings about things onto Compton. So let's move forwards. um, so the crack epidemic devastated many communities, leading to increased crime rates, poverty, and broken families, which directly impacted Kendrick's upbringing. Kendrick's music often reflects on the tension and violence that young people in Compton faced, and he openly discusses the influence of the streets on his life. The iconic Good Kid, Mad City album, for example, details his experiences navigating a city consumed by these issues, particularly as a teenager. Um, in addition to all of, like, your, like, drugs taking over a community, in addition to that, we also are seeing kids who are watching their parents struggle every day with money, who may not even be around to truly foster an environment for a child to succeed. Like, you really need to think about how this upbringing affects you for the rest of your life. It changes your perspective out of, it puts you in survival mode. And that's something that Kendrick discusses, of when you, like, so much in his music, of, here is something that has broken me down so much that I basically have turned quote unquote evil. And yeah, it's very, and I think a lot of people relate to that, whether they identify with the marginalization that he is directly talking about or not. um so the next point that we have for this time period is police brutality. We have to talk about, if we're going to talk about this time period of Kendrick Lamar gaining sentience, where he's finally on his own, he's really starting to, during those years from, like, I don't know, 13 to 20, 23, 24, I would say, you're really trying to fucking figure out who you are, right? That 10 age gap, the is really like, your brain is firing, of like, all right, take that into consideration, take this into consideration, take that into consideration. So during this time period in 1992 in Los Angeles, Rodney King happens. So if you don't know, obviously you should know the story of Rodney King, and if you don't, lots of videos to discuss. Rodney King was brutally beaten by the Los Angeles police. Um, and it sparked widespread outrage throughout the country. And then later, that contributed to the 1992 riots in Los Angeles, the LA riots. Kendrick frequently addresses police brutality and systemic racism in his music, especially in songs like The Blacker the Berry, and then All Right. All Right is probably one of my top 10 songs ever. I think it is. any hip hop head probably, and I'm not self identifying. I, please do not, please do not. I like hip hop, but don't come for me. But name 3 songs. I don't care. Fuck you. Okay. Um, he paints a picture of how this how else if you are a 13 to 24-year-old, if you are within that 10-year gap and your neurons are firing, you're like, all right, take that into consideration. Oh, okay. Crack epidemic in my community. Okay, take that into consideration. Who are the people who usually live in Compton? All right, they don't care about our community. Okay, okay. Oh, Rodney King. Neurons firing. This is going to shape how you feel about the United States, the government, for not supporting Black people more, for not caring that there is a literal drug epidemic, and then also, and actually inciting a drug. And then you see the police department, an entity who has always been against Black people, an entity, the police were created by slave owners. I'm actually maybe talking out of my ass, but I think that let me do some research on that so I'm not just talking. So, police. How did police become a thing in the US? The origins of modern day policing can be tracked back to the slave patrol. Hey, guess who was right? The earliest formal slave patrol was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with one mission: to establish a system of terror and squash slave uprisings with the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. So, I mean, like, I don't know, imagine you're between the ages of, like 13 and 24. And them's are the bitches that are beating you to death. Wouldn't that affect the way you perceive cops, perceive white folk in general for the rest of your life? Like, this is discussed in detail throughout his music. Okay. What's next? Economic disparity and lack of opportunity. That's the next thing. When I was projecting all that shit before about Compton, I think this is really where I was headed. I think that I also do this, so no tea, no shade. Part of my implicit bias is that I associate wealth with white, and I associate socioeconomic struggle or poor with people of color. Hey, honesty hour. That's part of my bias that I have over the last year. My therapist and I have been really, really unpacking because when she and I have been unpacking it together, I think, I don't know how to say this in a way doesn't feel weird. My therapist is a Black lady. I have never had success with a therapist that wasn't a Black woman. So I think my therapist and I have really been unpacking that together because she's also brought it to my attention a little bit of like, is part of my resentment for my upbringing the fact that I'm white and therefore I shouldn't have to be dealing with that or whatever. And that's certainly maybe part of it. It's regardless, it's something that we unpack together because I think that a lot of the trauma and the stuff that she and I have discussed, like I've really broken a lot of things down of like not feeling like I fit into space, like just all sorts of stuff. Anyway, something that we've sort of discovered together, a lot of privileges that we associate with white privilege are really socioeconomic privileges. And because we systemically and institutionally push down communities that are predominantly Black and other people of color, um, that's why we associate the two. And so something that also Kendrick was dealing with was socioeconomic disparity, right? Compton, like many other predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods in America, faced economic hardships. Poverty, limited access to quality education, and a lack of job opportunities created an environment where many young people, including Kendrick, had to navigate obstacles that stemmed from structural inequality. This lack of opportunity often led to feelings of hopelessness and frustration, and many young people turn to gangs or street life as a means of survival or identity. Kendrick's lyrics often reflect the internal and external struggles of growing up in a community that was economically marginalized. He's spoken about how his family struggled financially, which led to a greater sense of wanting to escape the cycle of poverty. We're going to do a whole episode about exiting poverty at some point, because there is a whole mindset that causes poverty to cycle. It is like a pain Olympics. Like there's a lot of poverty stricken communities and neighborhoods that it's almost seen as a bad thing to leave the community too. And there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. Like I like that Kendrick Lamar addresses all this. But these are things that he's also having to see. Like he's seeing, oh, there are people who grow up with more money than me and therefore they have more opportunities than me. He's seeing all of that. And I think like we've discussed a little, I didn't know, like I thought everyone was living the way that I was living until I went to college. And maybe that was naive. And I like, so I, and maybe Kendrick is the same way. I didn't even know that I was poor. And I wasn't poor for where I came from, I was not poor amongst them. However, like amongst the other people in my community, them sounded crazy. Sorry. Um, that was very exclusive. Like I did not mean it like that. But so in comparison to in comparison to everyone else in my community, I would say that we were pretty middle of the road, or at least lived that way. Whether or not we were actually that is something that I still don't know. Right? It's like we'll get to that another day. However, in the grand scheme of the world, I was lower middle class, if that. Right. And so that realization is also something that that is another neuron firing, another factoid to put in Kendrick's brain of like, what's happening here? How do I navigate this world for the rest of my life? So the next point that we're going to talk about is cultural identity and Black empowerment. So even with all of that suppression from the governing body, right? Suppression is something that we're very familiar with as it relates to the governing body. We also find that we have artists like NWA. We have artists like, who else do we have here? I had someone else in my notes. Maybe I didn't. Okay. My bad. But we have NWA, we have like Tupac. We're heading in this direction. And that's where Black art, I think, really starts to take off. Black creativity in a big way. Um, if you remember last year, we talked about Jean Michel Basquiat as well. This is around the same time that's happening too. So in tandem, we have like Andy Warhol, Basquiat, in like moving, trying to break through for Basquiat of pop culture in the artist sphere. And then we have like NWA, Tupac. We have these like almost punk rock, but hip hop. I think punk and hip hop are very closely related. Um, and we have that like fuck the government, anarchist sort of viewpoint coming forward in Black culture. Or like, we have been suppressed for long enough. This is sort of the first time ever in history that we have enough gain, like power, or and like that's sad because even the power that they did have, or the stake in the community, was still very low, but they had enough safety or confidence to start making those fuck the police type of sounds. They were finally protected under the Constitution as equal members of United States society. And they were some of the first adults that witnessed a lot of those desegregation like moments in history and could comment on them in their art. And so that's Kendrick was watching some of the first adults do that. And so that was also a big part of his influences. So these artists spoke out about police brutality and the struggles of inner city life, shaping Kendrick's worldview. More neurons firing off. He has mentioned how influential these artists were in showing him that this voice could have an impact on social and political issues. Like, this is, we've had artists sort of be celebrity and political entities were sort of separate. You had celebrities who were seen as like godlike figures. And then you had political figures who were like slimy and like whatever, but the two shall not cross usually. I think this is when things start to get a little bit blurry. And so Kendrick realized, okay, well, I can start to use my art, my creativity as a way to comment. Basquiat does the same stuff. So that's sort of seeing other Black figures try to do it before him. And we touched on the LA riots a little bit, but I have a little short snippet about it saying the LA riots were a defining moment of the early 90s, triggered by the acquittal of the police officers who had beaten Rodney King. The riots were a violent response to the deep seated frustration over police brutality, radical inequality, and the lack of justice for Black people. While Kendrick was only a child at the time, the riots would have deeply impacted his community as they highlighted the extent of racial injustice and the frustration that had been building up in Black neighborhoods like Compton. Yeah, not much more I can say on that. Even I can tell you that even the Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd murder, really, as a person between the ages of 13 and 24, changed my life in a lot of ways. It changed a lot of the feelings I had already had because of the college experience that I had discussed. Of like, college really radicalized me in a way of really seeing shit for what it was for the first time. And like, I think a lot of conservative parents think that college radicalizes you because they're teaching it to you. They're like indoctrinating you, you know? And And I don't think that's the case. I think that when you're put in an environment where you are surrounded by people who are so different than you and so, from so many different walks of life than you learn how to have empathy for those people. And you're like, wow, you're a real person. And that for most people, but for for me, it was sort of the opposite thing where I was like, oh, these people really are trash, you know? Like I didn't know for real. I'd been hearing that white folks were trash for so long, and then I got to see that shit firsthand. Like I had seen my family act sort of belligerent, you know, but I was like, they're old. Like and not like yeah. But I hope that yeah, the LA riots. Next we have like music as a political voice. We talked about that a little bit. A little gross, but I think there are times. I this is another very conservative. If you can't tell, we're sort of anti-conservative around here, around these parts. And I think another very conservative mindset is that the left really idolizes celebrities. It took me a million years to sort of get that thought together in my brain and out of my mouth. So sorry about that. But I think that we like once people were granted the true freedom of speech and every person is considered a real human being, um, that allowed for artists in history. Creatives have always commented on what they've seen around them. We have artists who have always done that. Like at every point in history, what we look to now when we want to learn about the political climate, when we want to learn about, we look at old artwork, we look at paintings, we look at sculptures, we look at um for Christ's sake, we look at the fucking hieroglyph. Like, what are we talking about? Hey, have artists not always been important? And who are celebrities? And like, they became celebrities. Some of them just became celebrities because they're hot. Some of them became celebrities because they're hot and they have a lot of money. Some of them became celebrities because they were hot, they have money, and they were on a reality TV show, or they hosted a reality TV show about being a businessman when he had many failed businesses. So when we talk about idolizing celebrities, you have to, that can't just be an over umbrella thing. When we see somebody like Kendrick Lamar, somebody who has put their whole life into commenting about the things that have been firing those biases, whether they positive or negative, right? These biases that we, because of context, we, there's a lot of people who have their biases because of their lived experiences, and that's not to justify racism, but have being weary of white folks because of the things that they've seen happen to people that look like them on white folks' account, it's certainly understandable. So I don't know. I think that that argument of idolizing celebrities, it should be more of a case by case basis. Because if the artist that you're looking at or the creative that you're looking at, the celebrity, because are they a celebrity or are they an artist? And when did we start making those things synonymous? You know. Anyway, so those are just sort of his lived experiences. So those, that's sort of the context to which Kendrick Lamar was growing up in. So now we can sort of we can sort of get into his breakthrough into hip hop and then his discography a little bit. Okay. So we have, okay, I did create a playlist that includes my top 3 songs from each album, and then some of his like features or singles that he's released, diss tracks, etc., that I think are stick out. Um, and I'll be honest, I haven't listened to his first 2 projects in their entirety. I do have so I looked on Reddit and I was like, what's everyone's favorite songs? And I took it from there. The 3 top songs that were widely loved by the masses. So I included those from the first 2 projects as well. But Kendrick rose to fame with his mixtapes, the ones that I haven't listened to, Overly Dedicated, that came out in 2010, and then Section 80, which came out in 2011. So, and that earned him some underground rap cred. And so, his real breakthrough came with Good Kid, Mad City, which was in 2012. This album was a narrative of growing up in Compton, blending personal stories with sharp social commentary. It became a critical and commercial success and earned Kendrick his first Grammy nominations. Crazy. Crazy for your first real album to get a Grammy nomination. Um, his follow-up albums, which are both behind me, if you can see them, we have other way. Sorry. We have To Pimp a Butterfly, and then we have Damn. Um, been a big Kendrick fan since high school. Love him. To Pimp a Butterfly is an ambitious project blending jazz, funk, and spoken word, addressing race, identity, and the African American experience, or the Black experience. It became a cultural touchstone and was hailed as one of the best albums of the decade. To Pimp a Butterfly is one of my top 5 albums, I would say, if not top 10 for sure. That album's not for me. It like it like it I know that it's a masterful album, but I think if I had to be honest, I identify more with some of his later work. I Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was very important to me. Every album that he's come out with, like Damn and After, has been exactly what I needed to hear when it came out. There are a few artists that really always have that for me. Kendrick's one of them. Ariana is one of them as well. They're sort of on the same album cycle. So I get really fed like every 4 years ish, you know? Um, so yeah, Damn is a more concise and introspective album. Damn won a Pulitzer Prize for music in 2018, came out in 2017, making Kendrick the first non jazz or classical artist to win the prestigious award. The album addresses themes like self reflection, morality, and the tension between good and evil. So, because the episode is out of spite, if you remember, we're going to go through the Pulitzer process, how it was received, the main reasons that they gave for giving him the award, etc. So, this is supposed to be sort of like a history lesson about a figure that we really like. So let's do it for real. All right. So, the Pulitzer Prize for music is typically awarded to classical or jazz compositions, making Kendrick the first non-jazz or classical artist to win this prestigious honor. The Pulitzer Board made the decision to award Lamar the prize for Damn due to its exceptional artistic qualities and its impact on music and culture. It was a monumental moment for hip hop as it symbolized the recognition of rap as an intellectually and artistically significant genre on the same level as every other long respected form of music. Tell them. Um, this is, I guess, me. I'm just gonna bitch about um people that I've seen in comment sections, that I've heard personally, etc. And their like critique of hip hop and rap music is always that it's just about sex, money, and drugs. What's a better time than that, bitch? First of all, when are you having the best times of your life? When there are sex, money, or drugs involved. I promise you. So maybe fucking smoke a blunt and, like, I don't know, relax. Shake your ass to some bass drums. I don't know. But anyway, like, on a serious note, that is such a like close-minded perspective. As if that's not a common theme of the people I critique. But it's such a like exhausted argument too. Like, there are hundreds of examples of that not being true. And there are quite literally songs about like loving tractors, and like there is no music that is easier to consume than country music, which is like the vice of many of the people who are critiquing rap. And so I just implore you to shut the fuck up, you know? Um anyway, so Damn was released in April of 2017 and quickly became a cultural touchstone. The album received widespread critical acclaim for its complex lyrics, thematic depth, and the way it blended personal introspection with broader societal issues. Bitch, fuck a double entendre. I want y'all to feel that shit, you know? At its core, the album was a narrative about the human experience, exploring themes of morality, spirituality, self doubt, personal responsibility, and the struggle between good and evil. And that's something that we'll be discussing a lot on this fucking podcast. I'll tell you what. Is this distracting? It's been 55 minutes. So if it is, very sorry. I might as well keep it going at this point though, you know? Anyway. Yeah, so where am I looking at? Oh, Good and Evil. Yeah, bitch. It's like the level of honesty that Kendrick allows himself to be with himself and sit with himself in that way. Can you see Dante yet? Oh, I don't know if he's in the screen yet. Okay. Is really illuminating to it's illuminating to witness as an audience member. You're like, wow, this man is being honest about some things that I may feel about myself too, but I'm not ready to face those things yet. And it's something luckily that you can always come back to, because songs can take you there, but they're quick, so you can get out of it really quick too. But as long as you're taken there for even just 3 minutes, it's worth it to go there a little bit than to not go there at all. So that self-awareness, I think, is beneficial in a cathartic way for both Kendrick, but also very important as a viewer, because you're able to take yourself there of hey, you're able to take yourself there. So next we're gonna go through the key reasons that they gave him the Pulitzer. They be stomping upstairs. Okay. So we have lyrical complexity and social commentary. We have social impact, artistic innovation, and then narrative and structure. So for lyrical complexity and social commentary, one of the most significant aspects of Damn is Kendrick's lyrical depth. The album deals with topics like faith, guilt, temptation, the contradictions within self identity, and the challenges of navigating a world filled with systemic oppression. These themes resonated deeply with listeners and critics alike, and many saw Kendrick's ability to communicate complex social issues as a key factor in the Pulitzer's decision. For cultural impact, I'm going to do lyrical complexity, social commentary, culture. Like, I'll start to comment when I'm ready. I'm like, I don't know what I want to say yet. I'm not ready. Um, Dan went beyond music and became a cultural phenomenon. Tracks like Humble and DNA were not just songs, but statements on race, identity, and power in America. The album addressed issues of Black pride and resilience, which were especially timely given the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and the growing awareness of police brutality. The song All Right from Kendrick's previous album, To Pimp a Butterfly, became an anthem for social justice movements, and Damn continued to explore these themes, making Kendrick an influential voice in contemporary social and political discourse. Now, let's talk about do we think that activism is ever going to be, maybe I'm not involved enough yet. I It's something I've been talking about, getting involved locally with politics, social causes that I care about, that sort of thing. That's one of my big goals for this year, is to make my time here matter a little bit more. I think that anyway, do we think that we will ever have activists the same way that we had like a Martin Luther King Jr. or we had like a Malcolm X? Or do we think that moving forward, our activists are going to be Bob Marley types? They're going to be Kendrick Lamar types. They're going to be Bob Dylan types. They're going to be these people who are witnessing things and commenting on them. And that, like, because how else do you get people to care about what you have to say? You know? Yeah. That's for the cultural impact part of this award. I think that's the most important part of music from my perspective, is it has the power to say things in rhythm, maybe because there's rhythmic backing, or like it's poetic. It's less of a gut punch. Like, it's similar to like the BoJack Horseman of it all, of like, because they're animals, it's a little bit more, it's a little less sad. I think that the social commentary almost needs to have that sort of rhythmic background so it's easier to digest for the average viewer, the people who are not directly affected. Obviously, I think that rightfully it should piss people off that it takes a Kendrick Lamar. And it pisses me off even partially because I know that there are white folks who are fans of Kendrick Lamar and still don't get it. It's like watching American Psycho and loving it for the wrong reasons, or like loving Fight Club and loving it because you think that those guys are badass and not because it's a commentary about masculinity. Like, I don't know. We can get into that another day. Um, Next, we have artistic innovation. In addition to the lyrics, Damn also receives praise for its musical production, blending elements like trap, jazz, R&B, and rock into a cohesive and unique sound. The album's intricate layering of beats, sounds, and flows represented an evolution in Kendrick's artistry, demonstrating his ability to push boundaries of hip hop. I think there are really not a lot of people in the game who do it quite as well as Kendrick, as it relates to making any interesting beat sound good. I like a few that come to mind: non-traditional beats, non-trap, very hi-hat centric. Other artists that come to mind when thinking about this are Baby Keem, Tyler the Creator, and then Doechii. Like, those are the other artists that come. Mac Miller, of using non-traditional beats in such a like beautiful way. Yeah, I like very, very cool. Anyway, and then narrative and structure. I listen, Damn from start to finish is cohesive. Like the whole album is telling a story. And I think that basically all of Kendrick's albums do that. I would argue that GNX may be the least that of all of his recent work, but um oftentimes, especially in the To Pimp a Butterfly, Damn, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, those three specifically tell complete stories from start to finish. So, also very cool that that was included. So it says the album. I honestly, this part I took from like Wikipedia. I like basically copied and pasted this information. Um, it says the album itself was a carefully constructed narrative with songs playing off each other and presenting a series of reflections on spirituality, morality, and the human condition. This level of conceptual depth was another reason Damn stood out. The album's structure and Kendrick's exploration of internal conflicts and external struggles added a layer of complexity that earned it recognition in both the music and literary worlds. Um, and then I could go over the Pulitzer process. I don't feel that necessary. I don't want to bore you too much. Honestly, so the reaction of the award was met with widespread acclaim both within the music industry and beyond. Many celebrated the Pulitzer's decision as long overdue, acknowledging that hip hop had been historically marginalized by certain cultural institutions despite its immense influence. Kendrick himself was initially surprised by the award, expressing his gratitude and emphasizing the significance of the recognition, just not for him, but for hip hop culture as a whole. This brings up another interesting point. We did a whole episode about this. I wouldn't say it was one of my better episodes. I think I was rambling. I didn't really understand what I wanted to say for real. But we talked a little bit about how categorization of art stifles it. For us to put urban category for you, like Tyler commented on, um or for Beyonce to not be included in country, just like this whole idea that we need to categorize art is silly, one. But also the reason why we do that is so that largely is so that we keep people of color in their place, to put it curtly. Um, and that's crazy. Like, when are we going? And that's not to say like it's so hard because when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that thing that everyone hates, because they're not qualified to work jobs and they're angry at other people about it. I think that I don't think that there needs to be a criteria, but also, does the chicken come first or does the egg come first? We need to be funding and putting into these communities that we know are marginalized so that they're at a more like a better equipped opportunity to be at the same level as some of these other candidates, if they're not. That's why there are scholarships that are only for minority, like etc. So that was the reaction to the award. In his acceptance speech, Kendrick Lamar remarked on the importance of art as a tool for communication, reflection, and change. He also dedicated the award to his community and to all artists who are using their platforms to speak on challenges facing marginalized groups. It's not hard, you know. Um, that's all I can really say. uh, it's not hard because there are works, like for example, right? Um, Pulitzer was seen as, somebody who was opening up and being accepting. But when you have pieces of artwork like Damn, it would be silly not to award them. And so the point is that there's always, the talent's always there. It's not that it's not there. I think that that's another commentary on something like this. I'm sure that they met pushback as well. Um, as he is meeting pushback for performing at the Super Bowl, it's seen as a diversity and inclusion thing. It's not seen as, Kendrick Lamar is one of the most impactful artists of our time. And he's being rewarded for that by being put on the largest stage in the world. I believe that the Super Bowl is like the most watched event of the year. And so he deserves that. He deserves to be on those stages. He's earned it. And because he is seen as inner city, commenting on things that are happening in the country, by the way, just because you don't want to talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. And it's disappointing. That's all. It's just disappointing. So my point is like, it's not hard. There's talent there. Like, there's always going to be the Kendrick Lamars of the different spaces. There's going to be the Kendrick Lamars of the engineering spaces. There's going to be Kendrick Lamars in the flute spaces. There's going to be Kendrick Lamar. I don't know why flute came to mind. There's going to be talented people of color for everything that you can imagine. You have to go search for them. And if you can't find them, you need to be pouring into the communities that will bring them. So if you can't find any candidates, maybe you should do some research about some communities in the area that you can volunteer at, that you, instead of recruiting candidates, you can maybe have a scholarship program. Like, there are ways to support marginalized groups that aren't coming up with the solution on your own, right? Go to those communities and ask them what they need, right? So yeah. So yeah, that's sort of his Pulitzer life. And then in 2022, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers came out. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers came out in a time where I was very depressed, becoming very socially aware of the issues that I had or have had. I'm working on them. They're almost gone. So this album further explores Kendrick's internal battles, touching on themes of mental health, generational trauma, and societal issues. This is another time where I think I was in Minneapolis on an internship when Mr. Morale came out. That, or it was like right at the end of summer, I think. I don't know. I don't remember. But I was there. There, like, 2 albums came out that summer. I think it was Mr. Morale, Hobo Johnson came out with Hobo Johnson Needs Help, or whatever that third album is, and then he came out with Alienates His Fan Base. And I was fed that summer. Like, I was I was music rich. And We Cry Together had such a life-changing impact on my life. I know that sounds crazy, but hearing that relationship dynamic happen in a theatrical way, I have played out that relationship dynamic. I played out that relationship dynamic when I was 16 years old. And probably less than that, if we're being completely honest. To hear it in such a, and it's not even hyperbolic. We Cry Together is a very real dynamic that so many couples have, especially if you grew up in any of those places if you grew up in a Compton or you grew up in a marginalized area. That relationship dynamic is so common amongst your people who you're supposed to respect growing up. Like, you see that a lot in the relationship dynamics of the people that you're, as a kid, that you're looking to. And then it very easily gets like brought onto you. Like, the first real boy, like serious boyfriend I had ever had, talked to me just like Kendrick talks to her. And I talked to him just like she talked to Kendrick, and we cry together. Like, it's devastating. It's devastating. But so much of growing up in spaces that are marginalized is just the cycle repeating until you physically take yourself out of it. You have to physically remove yourself and hope that you make it when you remove yourself, and hope that you don't end up back home. Um, Unfortunately, you know. So, okay. We talked about Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Um, some other accolades that we can talk about is Kendrick has amassed 13 Grammys as of 2023, including Best Rap Album for To Pimp a Butterfly, Damn, and Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Pulitzer Prize for Music for Damn. He's won MTV Video Music Awards, BET Awards, and various other recognitions. We're gonna get into 3 songs. I picked Not Like Us. I picked Ronald Reagan era, which is from, I think, Section 80, and then All Right. Those are 3 songs that I wanted to sort of analyze their personal meanings and their sociopolitical meanings, because he's always a double entendre type. So that'll be the last thing we talk about. I know I've been yapping on here for an hour and 18 minutes already, but this is my boy, you know. I love him. And these are not, just because these are the ones I decided to talk about, they are not my favorite. And Not Like Us is, I, out of all the diss tracks, I prefer Euphoria. Euphoria is my favorite. But Not Like Us is so culturally important, and became so culturally important that I think all 3 of these songs sort of talk about the same things. And it shows that his heart has always stayed the same. What he cares about, the things that impact him, and his I guess overall message, his impact, or what he wants to achieve, are talked about, I think, in these 3 songs very well. They sum it up very well. So anyway, let's start with Ronald Reagan era. So this came out, this is the earliest one that we're going to talk about. We'll talk about them from oldest to newest. So Ronald Reagan era takes Kendrick into deeper, more reflective territory. This is his personal meaning. As he looks back on how the policies of the Reagan administration affected his community. In terms of personal meaning, the track showcases Kendrick's contemplation on how his own upbringing was directly impacted by the social and economic conditions of the time. He contrasts his childhood and the way things have shaped his worldview, especially as a product of these difficult circumstances. It's fuck Ronald Reagan till we die. That's all I have to say about that. For the socio-political meaning, the track is a direct critique of the Ronald Reagan administration, particularly the impact on its policies had. Oh, sorry. Particularly, me can't read my own writing. Particularly the impact its policies had on poor urban and Black communities. Kendrick uses the crack epidemic as a central metaphor for the damage caused by Reagan era policies, which led to widespread poverty and drug addiction. The song addresses how the war on drugs disproportionately affected Black and Brown communities, with mass incarceration as a consequence. And we can talk about that another day, because that whole the Reagan, the industrial prison complex is crazy. And I would like to do like a deep dive into it because I am ignorant to it and I need to be a little bit more informed before I decide to talk about it. But I am aware of the capacity and I'm aware of the bigness of it, I guess. The title itself refers to Ronald Reagan's policies and the impact of his presidency, which left a lasting negative effect on underprivileged neighborhoods. The song critiques how systemic injustice and government neglect became foundational to the struggles of Black Americans during this era, fostering cycles of violence, crime, and economic disenfranchisement. Yeah. So I think we are still facing the effects of the crack epidemic. My apologies. We are still facing the repercussions of those incited acts of terror in our US government. All Right is the next song that we're going to talk about. It is arguably Kendrick Lamar's biggest song. It is very important to me, as I know that it is very important to countless people. So his personal meaning, based on my assumptions, are this is one of Kendrick's most uplifting and powerful tracks, particularly in its personal meaning. The song is a declaration of resilience in the face of adversity. It reflects Kendrick's own journey of overcoming challenges, from growing up in Compton to dealing with personal doubts and societal obstacles. Kendrick expresses hope and empowerment, proclaiming that no matter the hardships, everything will be all right in the end. The repetitive chorus serves as an affirmation of survival, inner strength, and the power of perseverance. And I think that, again, this sentiment of fuck, we've been through some shit, but we're gonna push through is very important to a common person. You know, I have nothing deep to say about it. And then for socio-political meaning, the song became a rally cry for the Black Lives Matter movement and speaks directly to the socio-political climate, especially in terms of police brutality and systemic racism. In the context of ongoing racial injustice in the United States, Kendrick emphasizes hope and resistance in the face of a system that seeks to oppress Black people. All Right symbolizes the resilience of Black communities in the face of violence, discrimination, and systemic oppression. It is a call for solidarity, strength, and empowerment, even in the darkest of times. The song challenges the notion that Black people are defeated and powerless The song challenges the notion that Black people are defeated or powerless instead of uplifting them as a force capable of overcoming. Let me try again. The song challenges the notion that Black people are defeated or powerless, instead uplifting them as a force capable of overcoming systemic challenges. And then finally, so All Right obviously is very important to me. It's very important to the Black Lives Matter movement. It is such you're like, damn, we could do some shit when that song comes on. I don't really know how else to describe it in like an accurate way. You're like, damn, we could do some shit. That like, damn, you know. So, and then we have Not Like Us, which came out last year. In Not Like Us, Kendrick examines feelings of alienation and separation from others, particularly in terms of identity and background. I don't know if I agree with what I wrote. Okay. I'm just going to say my piece a little bit about Not Like Us. So, yes, he discusses his feelings of alienation, but also he's alienating. So there are some critiques about Kendrick Lamar that can't It's been an hour and a half and I can't fucking talk anymore. So be kind to me. I think that Kendrick Lamar minded his business a little too much. I think one there's a time where Kendrick would have benefited from being like white folks a little bit, in that like he maybe should have been in other people's business a little bit, you know? And like I think that Kendrick, if he had the information that Drake was a predator, um, should not have leveraged it for beef. I think that's a little crazy. So we can talk about the impact that Kendrick has and will continue to have, or with also being like we can critique him. I do think that regardless when that information when it was time, but I also listen. It's a little hypocritic, or is that the right word? I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. It's a little hypocritical for me to say that because I did sit on the Giglio information until it was able to be discussed in a real way. So like if that's what it was, then cool. If we were waiting for like a general Drake downfall to then be like, okay, I'm glad y'all said that. Here's this. But I don't know. I like it's all a lot. And so there is some alienation that I think comes with like like I said, these are all discussions that should be happening within the Black community. That I have no business commenting on. There was just like four bright blue cars that drove past, and like that's not a common car. Anyway, yeah, the end of the episode's rough. Uh, but like the T is like not like us is a cultural moment. I think that changed like it changed the perception of who can be out, like not outed, but like anyone can be brought down, and I think that it's going to shape us in a lot of ways, give a lot of people the courage that they need to, like, if Kendrick Lamar is going after like a powerhouse like Drake, like it's possible, dude. Like we need to be calling out these people. We need, like, I think that it is common to want to root for like an underdog like Kendrick Lamar. And I find myself doing so when I listen to his music. And so I don't know. I think Not Like Us is going to help with a lot moving forward. So I don't know. That's sort of what I got about Mr. Kendrick Lamar. I know I've been talking for 10 years. It's an hour and 30. So I'm going to quit yapping now. My voice is hoarse. I'm tired. So, fuck that guy, dude. So I commented on that dude's post and I was like, hey, Kendrick literally won a Pulitzer Prize, fucker. Like, I was so. And they like literally, I got so many response of like white boomers being like, Obama must have gave it to him. They just give those out to anybody these days. Like, really on their hater ass bitch shit. And so as much as I like want to as much as I want to critique Kendrick, there's a part of me that's like, fuck all that, because I'm sick of the morality contest and I am not doing that anymore. Kendrick's doing the best he can, and so am I. I've changed my opinion in the matter of this podcast episode. So I think that's all that I got today. I'm fucking I'm gonna go do something. All right, bye. Love you.